In a small African town, preacher Obafemi was a man everyone admired. His sermons were powerful, filled with stories and lessons that touched the hearts of everyone who listened. People traveled from other towns to hear him speak. Whether they were chiefs, farmers, or traders, they all respected him. His voice carried strength, and his words brought comfort to those who felt lost. Preacher Obafemi wasn't just admired for his words. He was also a man of action. He helped the poor, built schools, and visited sick people in the hospital to pray for them. To many, he was more than a preacher. He was a leader, a guide, and a friend. Beside him stood his wife, Mama Nkem, a woman who everyone in the town loved. She was kind, wise, and always ready to help others. She had a soft voice that could calm anyone, and a warm smile that made people feel safe. Mama Nkem often organized events at the church, teaching women how to cook, sew, and care for their families. She was seen as the perfect example of a godly wife and mother. Together, the Obafemis were the picture of a perfect family. They had one child, Sam, and they were proud of him. Sam was everything parents could hope for in a child. He was tall and handsome, with smooth brown skin and a bright smile that lit up his face. Sam was also very intelligent. He had gone to one of the best universities in the world, far away from home, and graduated with the highest honors. When he returned, the whole town celebrated his success. "He is a true son of his father," people would say. Preacher Obafemi has raised him well. Young women in the town admired Sam. They giggled when they saw him walk by, and some even wrote him secret notes, hoping he would notice them. He was quiet and calm, never boasting about his achievements, which made people like him even more. To everyone, Sam's life seemed perfect. He had everything: looks, intelligence, and a bright future. But Sam carried a secret, one that he had kept hidden for a long time. It was a secret that made his heart heavy and kept him awake at night. He knew that if people found out, everything would change. His father's pride, his mother's love, and the respect of the town. All of it could disappear. Sam wanted to be honest, but he was afraid. He didn't know how his parents would react or how the town would treat him. So he stayed silent, hiding his true self behind a smile. But deep inside, he felt like he was living a lie. Little did Sam know, his secret would soon come to light, and it would shake his family and the entire town. Preacher Obafemi had big dreams for Sam. From the moment Sam was born, his father believed that God had a special plan for him. "This boy will do great things," he would say, holding baby Sam in his arms. "He will carry on my work and bring light to the world." As Sam grew older, Preacher Obafemi's dreams became clearer. He wanted his son to follow in his footsteps and become a preacher. To him, it was not just a hope, it was a calling. Sam would one day lead the church, just as his father had done for so many years. Preacher Obafemi was a man of tradition. In his mind, there was a clear path for Sam to follow. First, he would start working in the church, learning how to preach, pray, and guide people. Then, he would marry a godly woman, someone who would support him and help him build a family. Together, they would raise children who would also serve God. This was the legacy Preacher Obafemi dreamed of, a family that would be remembered for their faith and service to the community. When Sam returned home from university, Preacher Obafemi was overjoyed. He saw his son as the perfect person to continue his work. Sam had the intelligence, the calmness, and the strength of character to lead people. In the preacher's eyes, it was as if God himself had prepared Sam for this role. One evening, as the family sat under the mango tree in their courtyard, Preacher Obafemi decided it was time to talk to Sam about the future. "Sam," he said, his deep voice steady, "you are my only son. God has blessed you with wisdom, strength, and a good heart. Now it is time for you to step into your destiny." Sam looked up from the book he was reading. "What do you mean, Father?" he asked. "I mean the church," Preacher Obafemi said. "The elders have offered you a leadership role. It's time for you to begin learning how to lead the congregation." Sam's stomach tightened. He had expected this conversation, but he still wasn't ready for it. "Father," he said slowly, "I don't think I can take this role." Preacher Obafemi frowned. "What do you mean?" "This is what you were born to do." Sam took a deep breath. "I have other plans for my life," he said. "I don't think the church is the right place for me." There was silence for a moment. The only sound was the rustling of leaves in the evening breeze. Then, Preacher Obafemi's voice rose, sharp and commanding. "Sam, this is your destiny. Our family's legacy is in your hands. It's your legacy, Father, not mine," Sam replied, his voice calm but firm. "I want to live my own life." Mama Nunkum, sensing the tension, placed a hand on her husband's arm. "Obafemi," she said gently, "perhaps Sam needs time to pray about this. God will guide him." But Preacher Obafemi was not convinced. To him, Sam's refusal felt like a betrayal. For weeks, the topic hung over the family like a dark cloud. Preacher Obafemi tried everything: prayers, family meetings, even stern lectures. But Sam remained firm in his decision. "Why can't he see what God has planned for him?" Preacher Obafemi would say to Mama Nkem late at night. "Why is he turning away from his calling?" Mama Nkem, though worried, tried to remain hopeful. "Give him time, my husband," she said. "He is still our son. He will find his way." But deep in his heart, Preacher Obafemi was afraid. What if Sam never came around? What if his son's refusal brought shame to their family? These thoughts kept him awake at night, planting seeds of anger and disappointment. Little did he know, the storm brewing in their family was far bigger than he could imagine. The tension in the Obafemi household grew heavier with each passing day. Preacher Obafemi avoided Sam during meals, and when they did speak, their conversations were short and cold. Sam felt the weight of his father's disappointment, but he didn't know how to make him understand. Deep down, Sam knew that the real reason for his father's anger hadn't yet been revealed. It wasn't just about the church. It was about who he truly was. For weeks, Sam struggled with the secret he carried. He had hidden this part of himself for years, even while studying abroad. It was the reason he avoided the eager young women who sent him letters and tried to get his attention. He had always known he was different, but saying it out loud felt like an impossible task. One evening, after dinner, Sam decided he couldn't keep it to himself any longer. His parents deserved to know the truth, even if it meant breaking their hearts. He waited until the house was quiet, then asked his parents to join him in the living room. "Father, Mother," he began, his voice trembling, "there's something I need to tell you." Preacher Obafemi sat up straight, his brows furrowing. Mama Unkum folded her hands in her lap, her face calm but curious. "What is it, Sam?" she asked gently. Sam hesitated. His throat felt dry and his heart pounded in his chest. "I've been keeping a secret," he said. "I've tried to hide it, but I can't anymore." "What kind of secret?" Preacher Obafemi demanded, his deep voice filled with suspicion. Sam took a deep breath. "I'm not attracted to women," he said, his words slow and careful. "I'm gay." The room fell silent. For a moment, the only sound was the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Then, Mama Nkem gasped and collapsed back into her chair. Her eyes rolled shut as she fainted. Sam jumped up, rushing to her side. "Mother, are you okay?" he cried, fanning her face with his hands. The household staff came running, bringing water and a fan. Slowly, Mama Nkem opened her eyes, but her face was pale, and her lips trembled. Meanwhile, Preacher Obafemi sat frozen in his chair, his face a mask of disbelief. His hands gripped the armrests tightly, and his jaw clenched. "What nonsense are you saying?" he barked, his voice shaking with anger. "It's not nonsense, Father," Sam said, his voice steady but pained. "This is who I am. I've known it for a long time." Preacher Obafemi shot to his feet, towering over Sam. "Do you know who you are? Do you know who I am?" he thundered. "I am Preacher Obafemi. The whole town looks up to me. And now you bring this shame to our family." Tears filled Sam's eyes, but he didn't back down. "Father, I've tried to change. I've prayed, I've fasted, but nothing works. This is my truth." "You are no son of mine," Preacher Obafemi roared. His voice echoed through the house, and the servants standing nearby lowered their heads, pretending not to hear. Mama Nkem, still weak from shock, reached out for her son. "Sam, my son," she whispered, "why would you do this to us? Why would you choose this path?" "It's not a choice, Mother," Sam said softly. "This is just who I am." Mama Nkem began to cry, her hands shaking. The sight of his mother's tears broke Sam's heart, but he knew he couldn't go back to hiding. He had to be honest, even if it hurt. That night, the Obafemi household was filled with sadness. Preacher Obafemi locked himself in his study, pacing back and forth, his mind racing with anger and confusion. Mama Nkem lay in bed, her pillow wet with tears. And Sam sat alone in his room, staring out the window, wondering if he had made a terrible mistake. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. No one spoke of what had happened the night before, but the atmosphere was tense. Preacher Obafemi avoided Sam, refusing to even look at him during breakfast. Mama Nkem barely touched her food, her eyes red from crying. But the silence didn't last long. Within days, rumors began to spread. Somehow, people in the town learned about Sam's secret. At first, it was just whispers between neighbors. "Did you hear about Preacher Obafemi's son?" one woman said to her friend at the market. "What did he do?" the friend asked, leaning in. "They say he's different," the woman whispered, her voice low. "Not interested in women." The whispers grew louder, and soon everyone in the town was talking about Sam. Some people were shocked, others were disgusted, and a few were curious. But nearly everyone agreed on one thing. The Obafemi family was no longer perfect. At church, people began to question Preacher Obafemi's leadership. How can he preach about righteousness when his own son is living in sin? One man said after the service. Preacher Obafemi heard the whispers and felt the weight of their judgment. His sermons grew harsher, filled with fiery warnings about sin and punishment. But no matter how loud he preached, he couldn't silence the shame he felt inside. The whispers in the town turned into open conversations, and soon the Obafemi family became the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. Everywhere Preacher Obafemi went, people stared at him, their faces filled with curiosity, pity, or judgment. Some avoided him altogether, unwilling to meet his eyes. For a man who had built his life on respect and admiration, the shame was unbearable. Preacher Obafemi's once strong voice grew weaker, and his sermons became angrier. "Sin is creeping into our homes," he thundered one Sunday morning, his fists pounding the pulpit. If we do not act, it will destroy everything we hold dear. In the front pew, Mama Nkem sat silently, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her usually bright and cheerful face was pale, and her eyes were tired. She hadn't been herself since Sam's confession. At home she barely spoke, often locking herself in her room to pray. She wanted to understand her son, but her heart was heavy with fear and confusion. Sam, on the other hand, felt like a stranger in his own home. His father refused to speak to him, and his mother avoided him. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt cold and empty. The servants, though polite, kept their distance, unsure of how to act around him. One evening, after another tense and silent dinner, Sam decided he couldn't take it any more. "Father," he said, his voice steady but firm, "I need to talk to you." Preacher Obafemi didn't look up from his plate. "There's nothing to discuss," he said coldly. "There is," Sam insisted. "You can't keep ignoring me. I'm still your son." Preacher Obafemi finally looked at him, his eyes filled with anger. "You stopped being my son the moment you brought shame to this family," he said. "Do you know what people are saying about us? About me? How can I lead a church when my own house is in chaos?" Sam's chest tightened, but he refused to back down. "Father, this isn't about the church. It's about me. I can't change who I am, no matter how much you want me to." "You don't even want to try," Preacher Obafemi shot back. "You've given up on God, and now you expect me to accept it." "I haven't given up on God," Sam said, his voice breaking. "But I can't live a lie just to make you happy." At that, Preacher Obafemi slammed his fist on the table. "Then leave," he shouted. "If you won't change, you have no place in this house." Mama Nkem gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Obafemi, no," she cried. "He's still our son." But Preacher Obafemi stood firm. "If he won't follow the path God has set for him, he is no son of mine." Sam's hands trembled as he pushed back his chair and stood up. "Fine," he said quietly. "I'll leave." That night, Sam packed his bags and left the house he had grown up in. As he walked through the dark streets, the weight of his father's words pressed down on him. He didn't know where he would go or what he would do, but he knew he couldn't stay where he wasn't wanted. Sam found a small house to rent on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room, but it was his. For the first time in his life, he felt free to be himself. In his new neighborhood, Sam met David, a kind and gentle man who quickly became his friend. David was older and had faced his own struggles with being accepted. He understood what Sam was going through and offered him the support he desperately needed. "You're not alone, Sam," David said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "There's nothing wrong with who you are. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." David's words were a comfort to Sam, and over time, their friendship grew into something deeper. For the first time, Sam felt truly loved and accepted for who he was. But the peace didn't last long. Word of Sam's new life soon reached the town, and the whispers began again. When people learned that Sam had a partner, the judgment grew harsher. At first, it was just gossip among neighbors. "Did you hear about Preacher Obafemi's son?" one woman asked her friend. "Yes," the friend replied, her voice dripping with disapproval. "He's living with another man. Can you imagine?" But soon, the whispers turned into action. Pastor Bala, who had always admired Preacher Obafemi, saw Sam's lifestyle as a threat to the church. "We cannot allow this to continue," he declared during a meeting with the church elders. "It's not just about Sam, it's about protecting the values of our community." Pastor Bala formed a group called the Holy Shield. Their goal was to drive Sam out of the town. They began harassing him, throwing rocks at his house and shouting hateful words outside his door. One night, as Sam and David were having dinner, a rock shattered their window. Startled, they rushed to the door and heard angry voices outside. "Abomination!" someone shouted. "You don't belong here." David pulled Sam back inside. "Don't go out there," he said firmly. "They're trying to provoke you." Sam nodded, but his heart was heavy. "Why can't they just leave me alone?" he whispered. While Sam faced hostility in his new life, his mother, Mama Nkem, struggled with her own guilt and sorrow. She missed her son terribly and hated the divide that had grown in their family. Though she didn't fully understand Sam's choices, she couldn't stop loving him. One evening, after everyone had gone to bed, Mama Nkem quietly left the house and walked to Sam's new home. When he opened the door and saw her standing there, his eyes filled with tears. "Mother," he said, his voice trembling, "what are you doing here?" "I came to see you, my son," she said softly. "A mother's love doesn't stop no matter what." They sat together in the small living room, sharing stories and memories. For the first time in weeks, Sam felt a sense of peace. From that day on, Mama Nkem visited Sam in secret, bringing him home-cooked meals and offering words of encouragement. Though she couldn't fix everything, her quiet support gave Sam the strength to keep going. Amaka was a young journalist who loved uncovering stories that mattered. She wasn't afraid to tackle difficult subjects, and her articles often made people think differently. She had heard about Sam's story through whispers in the market and had read the harsh comments people made about him. But instead of judging, Amaka felt curious and deeply sad. Amaka's sadness wasn't just for Sam. Years earlier, she had lost her brother Kine in a similar way. Kine had been cast out of their family for being different. He was kind, gentle, and full of life, but his family couldn't accept him. Kane left their home, and months later, news came that he had passed away in a faraway city. Amaka carried the guilt of not standing up for him, and it was a wound that never healed. When Amaka heard about Sam, she saw an opportunity to do for him what she couldn't do for Keen. "Maybe I can help him," she thought. "Maybe I can change the way people see him." One sunny afternoon, Amaka knocked on Sam's door. He opened it cautiously, unsure of who she was. "Hello, Sam," she said warmly. "My name is Amaka. I'm a journalist, and I'd like to tell your story." Sam frowned, unsure if he could trust her. "Why do you want to write about me?" he asked. "Because people like you deserve to be heard," Amaka replied. "You're brave for living your truth, even when it's hard. Your story could help others understand." Sam hesitated. He had avoided the media because he was afraid they might twist his words or make his life even harder. But something about Amaka's kind eyes made him want to believe her. "Okay," he said finally, "but only if you promise to tell the truth." "I promise," Amaka said, smiling. Over the next few weeks, Amaka spent hours talking to Sam and getting to know him. She asked about his childhood, his time at university, and how he came to accept himself. Sam opened up about the pain of hiding his true self and the courage it took to tell his parents the truth. "It wasn't easy," he admitted. "I was scared of losing them, but I couldn't keep living a lie." Amaka also spoke to David, who shared his perspective. "Sam is one of the strongest people I've ever met," David said. "Even when the world is against him, he keeps going. That's something I admire." To continue watching and know what happened to Sam, please check out the part 2 of this interesting and captivating folk tales. Do not forget to subscribe and click on the notification button for updates on interesting life-changing stories.